Did you read Atomic Habits? Great, let's talk about it. Atomic Habits. Oh, a book I love so. This is one of those books that's well worth reading multiple times because it's so full of valuable information to build great habits. In this video, I'll give you a quick review of the book and what I've determined to be my top 5 takeaways from the 20 chapters that I read and how I plan to apply what I learned moving forward. Let's begin. My number 5 takeaway is about this big mindset shift that you need to have, according to James, that was discussed in chapter 1 of Atomic Habits, is that you can't get so obsessed with the goals and more focus on systems. I'll talk a little bit more about that later in my top 5, but one of the reasons of why that is with goals is that it takes a while to accomplish. So it's easy to want to give up on them while you're trudging along to hit a milestone, and thus harder to hold on to happiness in the experience. If you can shift yourself to find yourself being content and happy with the process itself, that's where you'll see more lasting change in your behavior. Now, personally, I feel like keeping yourself motivated is the hard part. So this is also why I'm really paying attention to streaks, like I talked about in a past takeaway. It's a way for you to give yourself credit and admiration for the little bit that you did today to keep you on track on where you're trying to go for your goals. Which also takes me to the thought of, why is it so hard to celebrate our progress? I'm trying to do better in celebrating all the small wins in the journey because even if you haven't hit the finish line, you've progressed further than where you were yesterday. Instead of looking at how much more you have to go, think about how much you've gone. Again, self-talk is a major influence here. So look at your progress, celebrate your consistency, and don't wait to be proud of yourself later. But be proud now that you've taken a step further in hitting your goals. For number 4, I'm going to piggyback off of number 5 to say that I didn't know that the stage of where you don't see anything changing at that conscious and competent state is called the valley of disappointment. And it truly is a valley. When you don't see any noticeable changes that signals progression, that could be so discouraging. But as tempting as it is to give up, this is not the time to do so. You just have to encourage yourself to be patient and stick to the system. I like the quote that James uses in chapter 1 when he talks about this saying, the most powerful outcomes are delayed. To be really transparent with you, this hit home for me. There's a few things that I'm personally doing that I'm trying to see an improvement on where I feel like I'm in that valley of disappointment. I won't name them all in particular, but one is even with this channel. I'm a huge psych nerd, so I'm super passionate about learning all about the research and studies and findings that I can learn about of how we as humans can live a better life and make better choices. I also love tea and the overwhelmingly long list of benefits that you can gain from it. So this channel came from that, an avenue to share that love with others of what excited me the most about a book or what tea I was most delighted about. But although I know I just started, it gets a little sad to see extremely low views. However, I know the name of the game is consistency. You just gotta keep showing up. It's just like working out, honestly. No one sees overwhelming improvement in just a month, but over time, you really will see how all the small changes your body makes compounds. And at least you having this full transformation. I'm hoping for that for me and my channel, so we'll see. Anyway, when it comes to your habits, push through that valley of disappointment and stick to that system that you have in place. Giving up on yourself too soon isn't fair to yourself to truly see what you can grow to become. For my number 3 takeaway, I just had to put this quote in this video because it really made me pause and think about it. In chapter 1 of Atomic Habits, James says this: good habits makes time your ally, bad habits makes time your enemy. Selah. What I got out of this quote is that time is always moving. You can't hit the pause button on life, but what you can do is take things one day at a time and make small decisions that will add or take away from your progress. When you're making those positive decisions one small choice at a time, time really becomes your ally. You can really start looking forward to time passing by because you know that you're on the right path with the right system that can get you to where you want to go and keep you there. However, if you're making negative decisions because you're putting off again and again what you should do under the premise that, oh, it's just this one time, it won't make that much of a difference, in time it actually will. You're going to actually feel anxiety or dread about how much time has moved on and you haven't made any progress in staying in alignment to your goals and systems. It's funny, I feel this way about my 10K step challenge. I don't feel like I need to do a do-over or anxious about the time that has passed because I have successfully stayed on track with it. However, what I haven't stayed on track with is my eating habits. And it really does bother me because I start wondering, wow, how much progress could I have made if I was as committed to good eating habits as I was with my 10K step challenge? What kind of body changes would I have seen by now if I were more consistent? Now be careful. Don't think of this quote as a reason to beat yourself up. One, because you're human, so you're not going to be perfect anyway. And two, some of you might be like me, of where you're trying to change everything in your life all at once. Trust me, you're setting yourself up for failure if you're doing that. The best thing I've done is chose one thing at a time to zero in on and slowly begin to add new habits to work on in the midst as I get stronger in others. I'm telling you that as me, Rachel, that's fine-tuning her understanding of habits, and me, the instructional designer, because we try to remind people in our classes that they need to prioritize that one action that would have the most impact on seeing results and focus in on just changing that one thing first so that they don't get overwhelmed. So be kind to yourself. Don't try to do it all at once. Pick one and do your best until you feel like it has become a habit so that you can shift to the next one thing you need to do. This takeaway is number 2 because this is advice that you don't normally hear when it comes to trying to change a behavior, which is why I think I agree that it is so important for James to mention it fresh out the gate in this book to give us all that foundational understanding. Here he talks about how important it is to not get so caught up in making strong goals and more so focus on your systems. What are those plans that you have in place where achieving the goal will be a result from it? We already talked about how you need to find joy in the process itself, and that's because of this. If you focus on your trajectory, the results will take care of itself. I love this quote that you don't rise to the level of your goals, you fall to the level of your system. This is why, and I'm about to say something slightly controversial, so stay with me here. This is why I'm not the biggest fan of making vision boards at the beginning of the year. Because it's great that you've made a visual of your goals, but what system do you have in place to ensure that goal is achieved? Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not bashing anyone who loves a good vision board. It's always nice to have some kind of visual to remind you of what you're striving for. However, I'm saying that just make sure you're not limiting it to just that. What system are you creating for yourself that you can analyze and adjust to create a system that will positively contribute to who you are trying to be? That is so key. Like James says, goals are great as it gives direction, but get to the nitty-gritty details of exactly how you're going to go about it to really see progress, and that's where the systems come into play. The biggest mindset change that made my number 1 takeaway is literally the first thing that James talks about in Atomic Habits, and something that you hear repeated throughout the entire book. He first gives an explanation of how important it is to start small. What are those small changes that you can do that can help you and your system to take you where you want to go in your life? Sometimes we want to change multiple things at once, as I mentioned earlier, but he cautions that we should really focus on 1% incremental changes, one thing at a time. 1% is pretty small, like tiny, but it's necessary to start that small so that you don't get overwhelmed in the change or not be able to pinpoint what needs to be adjusted. It's this additional focus on reflecting on how you're doing and adjusting to it. And I think a lot of times we don't spend enough time really reflecting on progress, but you have to have that scheduled in your journey so that you can ensure that you're going in the right direction. For many habits, it may just be you doing self-reflection, but for other habits and skills like having stronger speaking skills, you may want to get feedback from others so that you can get a clear view of yourself and how you're doing. Now for me, I'm trying my best to slow it down. Stop with all my toxic ambition that I can end up being at times, and just do one thing at a time. Do the best I can with the day and try each day to see if I can move the needle just an inch forward. Since I started doing that, I've noticed that I'm not stressed or having anxiety about my progression, and that I'm not giving up on my goals as much because, sometimes we'll just be like, well, F that, I'll just try again next month or next year. But we have to be realistic with ourselves and don't take it as a personal thing if we're unable to change as quickly as we originally wanted to. It can be so hard to be patient with ourselves. I find it incredibly hard, but you have to be if you want to keep yourself sane. Overall, those are my top 5 takeaways from Atomic Habits. Honestly, I've had so many more takeaways, but I just couldn't make videos for all of them. I'll be breaking my timeline of sharing book reviews if I did that. So all I'm going to say is just read the book for yourself and take lots of notes, because this was just the tip of the iceberg. I recommend this book to people all the time, as it has drastically helped me in improving how I approach building good habits. I'm hopeful that it will do the same for you. Take care and happy reading.